We're calling these notes 5.0 because we're doing it before we start Chapter 5. It's a review on slope from Chapter 4. All right, so recall a number can denote the steepness of a line, how steep it is. This number is called the slope of a line. Steepness is also called the slope. I think there's more. Oh, there we go. Steepness, slope. Some of these blanks you might be able to fill in on your own. To find the slope of a line, we need to pick how many points? To find the slope. Two. You need 2 points to find the slope of a line. Okay, so slope, we refer to a few different ways. What's one way we refer to it as? What over what? Rise over run. Slope is easy, slope is fun, slope is always rise over run. Okay, we also use what letter for slope?
B, Y, M.
Whoa. M. Okay, we use M for slope. I'm going to write this down here. You could, because I don't have room there. We use M, and what's the formula when we have 2 points for finding the slope?
0. Wait,
If I have 2 points, how do I find the slope? I'll give you a
slope
hint.
point.
There are
Point
some
slope.
subtraction signs in there. You're taking it a step further.
Oh.
Good. Y2 minus Y1 over
X2.
X2 minus X1. Sounds like we're a little rusty on our slope skills after break, which is okay. That's why we're taking a day to review it, but we got to make sure it's all coming back to us. Questions, concerns, need more time on this slide? Okay, we'll keep it moving. For our first couple examples, we are just finding the slope of the line through those points. So as a reminder, up at the top, off to the side, I'm going to put our formula. We just wrote it down. M equals Y2 minus Y1 over X2 minus X1. So if I'm doing that with problem number 1, what am I writing in my numerator?
8. No.
Yeah.
Yeah, 8 minus 3.
Good. My numerator is 8 minus 3. My denominator?
4 plus 2.
4 plus 2.
That's a 6.
Oop. Because I was skipping ahead a little bit there. All right. Questions about why it's 4 plus 2? Yes. Good. So we would have had 4 minus negative 2, and that's why it switched to being plus. 8 minus 3 gives me
5.
4 plus 2.
6.
Wonderful. So our slope is 5/6. Go ahead and try the second one, and we'll talk about the answer in just a moment.
1 over negative 2.
Anybody else get 1 over negative 2? Or you could have gotten negative 1 over 2. Do we have any other options? Agree, disagree? I haven't figured it out, so I'm just asking you guys. Nobody but Jasha did the problem?
I agree.
Lydia agrees. Anybody else? Dante does not. Well, let's see. In our numerator, what should we have had?
Negative 5.
Careful.
2.
2 plus 6. Okay, so we got to do y's on top. So 2 plus 6 on top.
Yeah, I got it.
And then what would go on the bottom?
Negative 5 plus 7.
Negative 5. Careful. minus 7. Good. So 2 plus 6 is
Oh, so
over.
that's wrong, mister. I'm missing.
Okay, so these ones are not what we think anymore. Okay.
Simplify.
Simplify it. What do we get?
4, 6.
Negative 6. Keep your negative sign. Which can reduce again to be 2 over negative 3. Anybody agree with that?
See, I was wrong.
Okay. That's fine. That's why we checked it. Questions about finding slope through 2 points. Make sure that you're doing y's on the top, x's on the bottom. Ready to move on?
Mm-hmm.
Question? Okay, we'll keep it moving. Graph the line given a slope and a point. So we're going to be rolling through these topics kind of quickly today because this is just a brief review of a bunch of stuff we've already done. When we graph from a point and a slope, we start off with the point.
2.
So we graph the point. Our point is at negative 3, 1. How do I get to that point?
Oh!
Good. Go to the left way 3 and then up 1. That's our starting point.
Up to left 1,
Careful.
right 1.
Okay, our slope is 2 or 2 over 1. So that's rise over run. So from our starting point, we rise positive 2. So we go up 2. We run a positive 1, which is over to the right. So up 2, right 1. Up 2, right 1. You can do it a few times. You can reverse both directions. So instead of going up and right, we could go down and left. Good. Down to left 1, down to left 1. Those points are on the same line. Now this will be extra important throughout this chapter that you get several points and that you're able to make a line that goes straight through them using something like your ID, something with a straight edge. Wiggly lines will not be any good during this chapter. Questions about graphing number 3? Okay, go ahead and try number 4 on your own real quick, and then we'll talk about it. So plot your point first, and then use your slope to get more points. All right, let's look at number 4. How did we get to our starting point?
Go right, up.
Good, right 1, up 1 is our starting point, and then our rise over run tells us to go where?
To the right.
Good, up 2 to the right 3. We can do that a couple times. Good, or down to left 3 a couple times. And then we can put our line through those. That point's not quite where it needs to be. There we go. Can't do it. There we go. Questions about graphing from a point and slope? Ready to move on?
Yeah.
Here we go. The slope-intercept form of an equation is... Anybody remember slope-intercept form? There is an M in there somewhere.
Wait, M? What? Isn't this y equals mx plus b?
There we go. Y equals mx plus b is correct. So y equals mx plus b is slope-intercept form. M is the slope. B is the y-intercept. That should all be review for all of us. Questions, concerns, or need more time? Okay. Then we need to graph these just using slope-intercept form. Very good. We start by identifying M and B. So if these are written in the form y equals mx plus b, The number in front of the x is my m. There's not a number written there, so I have to remember that it is a 1. So I agree with Jasha. The slope is 1 over 1. If you just wrote 1 big 1, that's fine. But it's nice to have it as a fraction for rise over run. What about our b?
3. Negative 3.
Good. B is equal to negative 3. So as a point, I agree with Lydia. We could write it as 0 comma negative 3. When we graph from slope-intercept form, we start with our y-intercept. That means we are putting a point where?
On the negative 3.
Negative 3 on which axis? The y-axis. So that is down 3 from the origin. Once you have that point, this is just like what we were reviewing on the last slide. You're going to use your rise over run. So my rise is?
1.
My run is?
1.
So where do we go? Up 1,
Right.
right 1, up 1, right 1, or you could go
Down 1.
down 1,
Left.
left 1. Very good. Okay, we've got several points on there. We can put our straight line through them. Let's go ahead and roll into example 6. What's my m?
2
2/5. And my b?
0,
Negative 2, or as a point, yes, 0, negative 2. Good. On the y-axis, we put a point at negative 2. That's my b, or my y-intercept.
Up 2, right 5.
We can go up 2, right 5.
You should do both ways.
We should do both ways so that we can get as many points as we can, which means instead of up and right, we go
Down 2, left 5.
down 2 and left 5. That's all the points that will fit on this graph. So it is important to have all 3 of those in this case. That's about as close as I'm going to get. Questions, concerns about graphing from slope-intercept form? Tomorrow, it will be extremely important for you to be able to graph, especially from slope-intercept form. If you can't do this on your own, what we've just done on this slide, you're not going to be able to handle what we're doing tomorrow. You've got to have this skill down to be able to do what's coming next. So if you're still feeling unsure about how we're getting these lines, I would be asking questions now or after class. Come in the morning and see me. Ask to go to tutoring when it starts next week, something. Everything we do tomorrow is about graphing lines. What's a little bit different about example 6 from what we've done so far?
It has a
Negative what? Negative slope, which means that instead of the line going uphill like it's been so far, all of our lines have kind of slanted the same direction. This time it's going to end up slanting the other way, downhill. So what is my m?
negative 1/3.
Negative 1/3. My b?
Negative 1, also 0.
Good. If we write it as a point, it would be 0 comma negative 4. So I start my line at a point on the y-axis, negative 4.
Down 1, left. I mean, right.
Good. So with a slope of a negative 1/3, you get to choose, are you giving the negative to the top or to the bottom? Remember, there's only one negative sign, so you cannot give it to both.
Wait, would you go up then? Like, never mind.
So if we go up 1, we would have to go which way 3?
Left.
Left. That would be giving the negative to the 3. So up 1, left 3, up 1, left 3. Or we can reverse it, give the negative to the 1, which means we would go
Right 3.
right 3, but before that we would go
Down 1.
Down 1. Good. Down 1 to the right 3. And as we talked about before we started the problem, our line is sloping downhill, whereas our other lines with a positive slope went uphill. Any questions or concerns about example 6? Okay, example 7 is an even more special situation. It doesn't have a slope. I sort of agree with that.
Slope is 0, 0, right?
Can we divide by 0?
Maybe 1.
Nope.
But then you always...
What?
3 will be the end.
Nope.
It wouldn't? Oh, 0. Oh, no.
Anybody remember this
Undefined.
special situation? Our slope is undefined.
But wouldn't it just be on the line?
What do you mean?
Well, we did like things like, so like it's just that we put it on the line that we can draw a line upwards.
Yep, you're correct. So what type of line is an x equals line? Vertical line. Very good. This is going to be a vertical line.
And 0 is going to be vertical.
So we'll talk about B in just a second. It's important to know this is a vertical line. So if it's an x equals line, then on the x-axis, we go to this number, positive 3. So we go to positive 3 on the x-axis. If you want to put a little point there, you can. That's fine. Vertical lines go which way? Up and down. So we are going to go through that point straight up and down. Arrows on the ends. That is the line x equals 3. I like for my arrows to stick up off of the graph at the top and the bottom. That makes it really obvious where that line is. Especially if you're just drawing lightly in pencil on top of a graph. If you don't go off of the graph, it might be hard to see where it is. Questions about graphing the line or about the slope of that line? Okay, the last thing we have to talk about then is the y-intercept, or the B. Y-intercept means that's where the line crosses the y-axis. Where does our vertical line touch the y-axis?
3. No.
So I'll highlight, what? It never does, and it never will. They're both going straight up and down. They are not going to touch, so there is no y-intercept, or you could put none. You could put doesn't exist, won't happen. Something to the effect of you understand that there is not a y-intercept. Those lines don't cross each other. Questions, concerns about number 7? Ready to move on? Okay, we've got one more topic on our review notes. Put the following equations in slope-intercept form. So, as a refresher, what is slope-intercept form? Good. Y equals mx plus b. That is what we want this to look like. We want y to be alone on the left side of the equal sign, then our x term, and then our constant term at the very end. So what needs to change or move or rearrange on number 8 for that to happen?
4x.
The 4x needs to move. How are we going to make it move?
Subtract 4x.
If you do it to one side, you better do it to the other side. Do we have a question? Okay.
Y equals -4x plus 10.
Very good. This is where I want you to be careful with your ordering. We need the 4x to be negative, but it comes first. The 10 was positive and it goes on the end. If you put 10 minus 4x, that is not slope-intercept form. So we need the x term to come first and keep its negative sign in this case. Questions about number 8? On number 9, what is the first thing that needs to move? We need to subtract 2x. Better do it to both sides. Good. 3y equals negative 2x plus 15. Are we done?
Divided by 3.
We are not done because of that 3. So when we divide by 3, what else gets divided by 3?
Everything else.
Very good. Everything else. So
Y equals negative 2x plus gotta do 15.
very good. So I would put the negative 2/3 out in front of the x. If you left the x kind of up there closer to the 2, technically that's okay. But I would write it more in front of the x instead. And yes, we can simplify 15 over 3 to be 5. Questions about those two? Okay, go ahead and try the last one there on your own, and we'll talk about it in a minute. I will leave these up here momentarily for those of you that have not gotten them down in your notes yet. What was the first thing that we did on number 10? We should subtract 5x first from both sides. What does that leave me with? Negative 2y equals negative 5x plus 12. Last step. Divide everything by a negative 2. Okay, if you put plus negative 6, technically that's okay, but I prefer it to be just a minus 6. So make sure when you are dividing through by a negative that you're changing your signs. So don't leave this as negative 5 over negative 2. A negative over a negative simplifies to be a positive. Now, this was a whole lot of material that we would have spent weeks doing last semester. This is just a quick review of all of it. What questions do we have? Dominic?
When would we have done this, like in December?
We would have probably started this chapter in November. This would have been November into December.